I'm going to go over how to analyze the oxygen content of a nitrox tank. Whenever you pick up a nitrox tank from a dive shop, you should always analyze the contents so you know what's in it. Before you actually dive the tank, you should analyze the contents. So there should always be 2 checks to verify the oxygen content in a nitrox tank before you dive it. This is an oxygen analyzer kit. This is our O2 analyzer. This is our flow regulator to control the flow of the gas into the analyzer. And this is a piece of surgical tubing to connect the flow regulator to the oxygen analyzer. Before we analyze the oxygen in our nitrox mix, we need to calibrate the oxygen sensor to make sure that it's reading accurately. I'm going to go over 3 ways to calibrate the sensor. The first way, and really the easiest, is to use the air around us. The air we're breathing is 20.9% oxygen. So when I turn on the sensor, it should read 20.9. When you first turn it on, it most likely will not. So you need to use the calibration knob to adjust the sensor until it reads 20.9. This knob is very sensitive, so just make small corrections. The second way to calibrate our oxygen sensor, and what will be a little more accurate for us, is to use a tank that we know has air in it. Here I have my regulator set up on the tank. The air is already turned on. I'm going to use the low pressure inflator hose and connect it to our flow regulator. I'm going to connect this just like I would connect my power inflator. Now when you're reading this gauge, you need to make sure you hold the flow regulator level. We're going to set the flow between 1 and 3 liters per minute. Using this knob, I'm going to adjust it to 2 liters per minute. Now, I'm going to connect our surgical tubing to the flow regulator, and I'm going to give it a moment for the gas that's passing through it to displace any gas that's already in the tube. Next, I'll take our oxygen sensor, I'll connect the tubing to it, and I'll turn it on. Our oxygen sensor should read 20.9. If it doesn't, I'll use the calibration knob and adjust it until it does. The third way we can calibrate an oxygen sensor is by connecting it to pure oxygen and making sure that the sensor reads 100. Now we're ready to analyze our nitrox tank. I have my nitrox tank with my regulator attached, the valve completely open. I have my flow regulator connected just as before and adjusted to 2 liters per minute. I've connected the surgical tubing and given it enough time for the gas from the tank to displace any gas that was already in the tube. I'll take the calibrated O2 sensor and connect the surgical tubing. Now we'll watch the display and wait till it levels off. It'll start to count up quickly and then slow down. You're going to watch it for a while and use the highest number that it displays.
Now I'm going to do the calculations for maximum operating depth. During our dive, we don't want to exceed a partial pressure of oxygen of 1.4 atmospheres. The fraction of oxygen in our nitrox cylinder is 0.328. We know the fraction of oxygen times the absolute pressure will give us the partial pressure of oxygen at depth. This means we can take the partial pressure of 1.4 atmospheres and divide it by the fraction of oxygen to get the absolute pressure of our maximum operating depth. When doing these calculations, always round for safety. Notice that I rounded the fraction of oxygen up to 0.33. The higher the fraction of oxygen, the shallower the maximum operating depth. So here I rounded up for safety. Next, we need to find at what depth in feet of seawater will give us this absolute pressure. To find water pressure, subtract air pressure, 1 atmosphere, from the absolute pressure, 4.24. We know that 33 feet of seawater maximum operating depth is 107 feet of seawater. If my calculations had come out to 107 point anything, I would have rounded down to 107 feet of seawater for safety.
We've analyzed our nitrox mix, and we've done our maximum operating depth calculations. Now we need to label a tank with our percent oxygen and our maximum operating depth that is rounded to safety. For any dive where your planned depth is close to your maximum operating depth, I would recommend also marking your MOD vertically along the side of the tank so that it's visible when the tank is on the BC. This will serve as a reminder for you, and it will also be visible to divers around.